Hello there. Today I bring you a question. A question which for too long has gone unanswered. A question which I first thought of and ever since have kept asking myself every minute of every day. A question which I'm sure you have all asked yourself many, many times. In fact, by now we deserve an answer. For this question is far more important than any other question in the Star Wars fandom. And that question would be, what if spinning wasn't a good trick? Let me refresh your memory. The peace on Naboo is shattered. The Trade Federation has blockaded the planet, and in a desperate attempt to reclaim the planet, the Naboo, led by Queen Amidala, and the Gungans have teamed up to try and regain their planet. The Gungans fight the droid army of the Trade Federation on the grassy plains, while Queen Amidala and her entourage try and reclaim the royal palace. Far above the planet's surface, a team of N1 starfighters try and destroy the Trade Federation's droid control ship. Unbeknown to most of the pilots, Anakin Skywalker has accidentally joined them after his ship automatically flew towards the droid control ship. He tries spinning because it's a good trick, and this enables him to avoid being shot by vulture droids. He then accidentally gets inside of the droid control ship, destroying it from the inside, and thus saving Naboo from the droids. But just for a moment, what if spinning hadn't been a good trick? Now, this question is so important and deserves so much thought that this video is actually going to be two videos, which I'm sure you're all aware of because this will probably be called part 1. The first part, which is today's video, we're going to look at what if Anakin tried spinning but it wasn't a good trick. And in the second part, we'll look at what if spinning wasn't a good trick and Anakin knew that and so didn't try spinning? Because these things which sound like such minor differences will have such a great impact on galactic history. Let's try spinning, that's a good trick, Anakin says as he tries to spin. Unfortunately, it is not a good trick. He crashes and burns and the Chosen One is no more. So what does this mean for the Battle of Naboo? Well, this time, the droids aren't shut down when Anakin destroys the control ship, because Anakin's not there to do that. And so the Gungans are forced to surrender, and the Trade Federation wins the day. However, we know that Palpatine is pulling the strings of both sides, and so it would only be a matter of time before he would appeal to his allies in the Senate and mount a second assault, defeating the Trade Federation, because, of course, he could tell them to lose. He would be able to do this before the treaty is signed, because, again, after all, he's the one that is telling the Trade Federation what to do, so he would just tell them not to have the treaty signed by this point. So in terms of the overall effect on Naboo, it wouldn't make much of a difference. Palpatine would still become Supreme Chancellor, and the Trade Federation would be forced to leave Naboo. Qui-Gon would still die, but this time Obi-Wan wouldn't have to take Anakin as his Padawan. He would have more time to become a greater, more wise Jedi before he took on a Padawan. Palpatine would also need a new long-term apprentice, because he would still think that Darth Maul had gone, or at least had failed him, and we know that in the real story of Star Wars he takes Count Dooku to be a temporary apprentice, but this time there would be no Anakin to be the eventual goal, and so Palpatine would somehow need to find himself a worthy apprentice. The way in which he would do this is he would get himself captured, maybe by bounty hunters or mercenaries, and he would be fully in control of the situation. He would manipulate the politics going on at the time so he could select which Jedi come and save him. He would select the Jedi which he thinks are most vulnerable to temptations to the dark side. Maybe 5 or 6 Jedi would come and rescue him, and once they'd arrived, he would cut off their communications and force them to fight each other, force them to undergo trials, and the winner would become his new apprentice, as he would force them to the dark side. It would appear that all of the Jedi that had gone to rescue him had died, because he could keep this final Jedi, who was now his apprentice, a secret. He could pretend that that Jedi had also died. He would return, saying that he was the only survivor. Obi-Wan would take an apprentice when he was more ready to, and in this scenario it will be played by Ahsoka Tano, because I need someone to represent Obi-Wan's apprentice. And if you like, it can be Ahsoka. If not, it's just a generic Jedi that we're not really aware of. Episode 2 would play out in a quite similar way to the way that it does in the actual film. However, this time, Obi-Wan and his apprentice would go to Kamino, following Jango Fett. They would then follow him to Geonosis and would both be captured. It would be at this point that Sidious's new apprentice would reveal themselves to the Jedi. It would turn out that he had survived his rescue mission for the Chancellor, but he was now a Sith. And the Geonosis scenes would play out in much the same way in which they did in the film. Obi-Wan and his Padawan, played by Ahsoka Tano, would be rescued by the Jedi Order, and the Clone Wars would start. The Clone Wars would happen in a very similar way to the way that it does in the animated show. However, Obi-Wan's apprentice would not yet have become a Jedi Knight, because Obi-Wan took the apprentice later, and the apprentice would not be anywhere near as gifted as Anakin. And of course, Darth Maul survived and would take over Death Watch just like he does in the Clone Wars. And so the Siege of Mandalore would happen as it does in the Clone Wars. However, this time, Palpatine would have no need to be captured by Grievous on the Invisible Hand, because he doesn't want a new apprentice, and so he doesn't need to be rescued by Anakin, because Anakin's not been around for quite a long time in this reality. And so, this time, there is no need to go and save the Chancellor. Obi-Wan and his new apprentice stay on Mandalore in order to help the Siege of Mandalore. Palpatine would not be aware of what was about to transpire, and Obi-Wan would very quickly capture Maul, because of course Obi-Wan is far more powerful than Maul. Maul does not immediately reveal that Palpatine is the Sith due to his blind hatred of Obi-Wan, but he would suggest that he knew more than he was letting on to. Once Maul had calmed down and realised there was no way he was going to escape, he would realise that the only way that he would get out of the situation he was in was to negotiate with Obi-Wan. He would tell Obi-Wan that in exchange for his release and a full pardon from the Jedi and the Republic, he would give them information as to who the Sith inside the Republic was. Obi-Wan would give this a bit of thought for a while, and would eventually realise that it was probably worth doing. He would contact the Jedi and tell them what Maul had offered him. However, Palpatine would be monitoring transmissions from the Jedi and into the Jedi. Palpatine would realise that he was running out of time. There would be no time to dispose of Grievous like we see in Episode 3. There would be no time to make sure that the Jedi Masters weren't in the temple to defend it. Instead, he would execute Order 66, as that is really all he could do before Maul exposed him. Order 66 would be successful, but far more Jedi would survive than in the Order 66 that we see in Episode 3, because the Jedi Masters would still be in the temple to defend it, and Maul would tell Kenobi, and so Kenobi and his Padawan would survive. All in all, about 50% of the Jedi would survive Order 66. They would be forced into hiding, and would go into hiding in small groups where they would continue their training. The Jedi would realise that it was partly down to them that the Jedi Order had fallen. They would re-evaluate their ideology and the way they looked at Jedi teachings. The Empire would rise, but would be unable to gain as much of a hold on the galaxy due to the Jedi factions that were basically acting as freedom fighters in the galaxy. General Grievous would be given new cybernetics and a new name. He would basically be rebranded as General Grievous Mark II, an agent of the Empire. He would continue to act as a warrior whose sole purpose was to wipe out the Jedi, and with the aid of Palpatine's apprentice, would go around trying to wipe out the small groups of Jedi that remained in the galaxy. Grievous, along with Palpatine's apprentice and a whole battalion of stormtroopers, would come across the Jedi when they were having a council meeting, and so would basically stumble across the most powerful Jedi all in one place. A large battle would happen, where some of the Jedi would inevitably be defeated, but they would win the battle. Yoda, Mace Windu would all survive, and the only survivor for the Empire would be General Grievous. Palpatine's apprentice would be defeated. The Jedi would realise that the Empire was possibly now at its weakest that it would ever be, and they would decide to mount a full-fledged counterattack against Palpatine. There would then be an epic battle. We'll say it would be on Coruscant, maybe in the old Jedi Temple, now the Imperial Palace. The Jedi would fight against Palpatine and Grievous, and after a long battle, with casualties on both sides, the Jedi would win. They would restore the Jedi Order to what it once had been, adopting their new ideology. The Republic would be restored, However, the Jedi would realise that the dark presence which had clouded their vision for so long during the Clone Wars was still around. Despite the defeat of Palpatine, it was like he hadn't left. They would trust their instincts and trust the Force far more than they did during the Clone Wars and in the prequels, because this was their new ideology. They would realise that Palpatine was still alive, out there somewhere. They would make it their mission to find Palpatine before he could come back. Eventually, led by the Force, they would find Exegol, where they would confront Palpatine for a final time and destroy him. That would be the end of the Sith. The Jedi Order and the Republic would win, and Palpatine would never return. And that's basically it. That's the way that I see Star Wars going if Anakin had tried spinning in Episode 1, but it hadn't been a good trick. Let me know what you think of it in the comments. Do you agree with me, or do you think it would have happened very differently to what I've said? Let me know. Remember to like the video, subscribe to the channel, watch any of the other videos I've made. There's a great one in the bottom left. YouTube's found it for you, so it must be good. It must be good. YouTube thinks it's good, so give it a click. That's all for now. Thanks for watching. Bye!